Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Mashonda Shines. Well, Happy New Year and welcome back, Try Beginner's Luck family, to another edition. It's 2025, and I feel like I'm coming back with the same hoarse voice that I left with when we departed last season with Noel Mulkey. But nonetheless, I'm really excited. Over the course of the past couple of months, I always try to think about, like, how do I want to come to this space? How do I want to encourage you? And what is it like to get back to basics? Yeah. So when I was thinking about my journey into sport, and based off of your feedback, I'm going to incorporate more of my life story in. I think about the first 5K I did back in 2009 with the Atlanta Track Club with the women's 5K. Then after that, I was like, oh, I think I want to do more. Then did Peachtree Road Race. Then did I think it was the Thanksgiving Day half marathon, which that was a whole nother story. I was like, I don't even know why I want to do this, but I wanted to do it again and train properly. So then I did, back in the day, it was ING half marathon. And then Publix took it over. I did that one with my homegirls in Atlanta, and I've never stopped running. Now, how I run has been different. Like, I got into the tri space, but I was looking at cars and seeing cars on my run one day and saw the 13.1 sticker and said, I remember when that 13.1 sticker was like a pinnacle, like it was everything. Then you get the 26.2 sticker and you're like, oh, I've made it. But sometimes when you convert over to the tri space, you're like, oh, that's just 13.1 miles, or that's just 26.2. But it was just where we started for many of us. And so a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity through the Endurance Exchange to interview someone who has produced more than, I'm gonna say a million, even though that's exaggerating, but a lot of sports, whether it was on the tri space, whether it's road running events. This person understands how to put on good events. And because he was a first, I said, oh, I have to have him on, because he started literally from the bottom and has made his way all the way to the top. And to see that evolution, I think sometimes people only see where you have arrived, but they don't see the beginning. And so here we go, back to basics, where we have the first African-American race director for, it's like a world majors race or just for a large company. But anyway, let me just tell you, he puts on one of the largest marathons globally, and that's the New York Marathon. So you probably already know who I'm talking about. So I'm just going to go ahead and give a couple of stats on who we are. In 2021, he was named race director of the TCS New York Marathon. In May of 2022, was promoted to senior vice president, and November of 2024 became New York Roadrunners chief event production officer and race director. And yes, I was right, because sometimes when I'm reading, I'm not reading the notes, but he was the first ever Black race director of an Abbott World Marathon Majors race. So without further ado, I get to welcome to this Try Beginners podcast and the audience, Mr. Ted Metellus. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck family. Ted, how you doing?
Mashonda, thank you very much. Thank you to your audience. It's good to see you again and reconnect after quite some time. Lots have happened in the last, 3+ years since we've connected and chatted, but I'm happy to be here. So thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. I'm always enamored when I see people in high places who look like me, because I always want to know, well, how? But you're a runner. you got your start running. I think you're a Brooklyn kid. Is that what they call it? Like a
No,
Brooklyn
I'm from the Bronx, so
from the Bronx. See, I got it
yes,
wrong. Oh,
it's all good. It's a B borough.
it's
It's
a
a B
B borough.
borough.
Okay, okay.
The Bronx, New York, which is the most northern borough of the five boroughs, born and raised there. And I smiled when you called me a runner. Some of my colleagues, some of my friends are what I would consider runners. Like they ran as youth, they ran in high school, they ran in college, and they continue to run and run very, very quickly. I like to run. Yes, I am a runner, but I would definitely call myself, a participant of running events. I ran a little bit, and we'll chat a little bit about my background, but running is the space that I've been in. But as we chatted just prior to on the pre interview, I sunk my teeth into the triathlon space, something fierce for a number of years. Having produced events in that area there and really delving into it. So while running is what I do, I would say I'm more in the endurance event space. So it's not exclusively about running. It is, all of the disciplines. So I've worked in the cycling space. I've worked obviously in the triathlon space. I've worked in the, mud run space. So I've touched into a lot of those areas there. And they all share a very similar DNA.
Let's get right into it. What is that DNA that they share? Because I think sometimes people detach themselves from the sport and they think, well, I'm an endurance sport, but I only do running, or I'm an endurance athlete, but I only cycle. Let's talk about what is the common thread that threads all of the endurance sports together.
Well, I think one of the first things to think about when you think about what is a commonality of all of those types of events, it is, it's broken down into a couple of things. One, first and foremost, is community. They all have a community. There's always a group of people that are training, preparing, participating, being involved in X activity, and they're not alone in that participation. They're not alone in that journey of, I've never done this before. How do I go down this path? Who do I talk to help train and get prepared for this and go on, whether it's cycling, whether it's running, whether it's swimming, any of those pieces there, they all share in that common thread. And then the other part too that's there is, the actual event component that's tied to it. All of us in the event space are doing a similar thing, which is ideally producing a safe, logistically sound, enjoyable experience. So they all are grounded in some sort of technical component to it, whether there is a marked route or course, a start and a finish. Some events, if it's in fact a timed event, will have awards and scoring and athletes that are going to be ranked in particular spaces. So all of those events all have a very similar piece to that. But I think the grounding component to it is community, which is all of us are coming here together to partake in this.
I would have to agree with you. I think when people think why they do it, one of the first answers is always community. And I think that mimics life in a lot of ways, right? Like we aren't meant to do life alone. We want to do things with people because we want to engage. We want to hang out with like-minded people. And so these sports definitely, I would wholeheartedly agree, community is one of the basis nucleus of why we do endurance sports, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, producing safe, memorable experiences for people, that doesn't come easy at all. Why did you decide to get into event production and how?
I enjoyed building components. I enjoyed the element of having people come together to experience a thing. Oddly enough, when I was in college, I helped produce, I worked for the student government board and worked for the student events board, which helped produce concerts and shows and things of that nature. And it was shows. It was producing acts and getting acts to come to our university for folks to come and experience. And I genuinely enjoyed all of the components that were tied to that. It wasn't in the endurance event space, but it shared, again, a unique DNA that all of them do, which is I'm going to have this thing that I want all these people to come to. I want them to experience. I want them to have a really good time, and I want them to go home safely. And when I did that in school, I loved it. I totally enjoyed bringing up, De La Soul, um, Wyclef with Destiny's Child. We're talking about a couple of years back. So those are just some of the acts that I helped bring up to my university, and that's when I got hooked. And then when I saw that there was a direct correlation of event production from that, concerts and special events component that can translate over to the endurance event space. I saw all the commonalities to that, but then I also saw that there's a unique group of people that really are passionate about name that sport and that activity and are really engaged in it. There's a tremendous camaraderie that was tied to it, and that's what locked me in and drew me to it. And been doing it for 26 years now.
That's some time that you've had to learn, to grow, to mature. But I'm one of those forward thinkers, and this is very random. But would you ever produce an event where you tied in like live concerts with running or with triathlon or cycling, where big acts like a De La Soul, like thinking about, I think Burning Man is too far out there, but like a Burning Man slash crit race, where people are out there partying. Is that something that you've ever thought about doing maybe in the running space?
Not only have I thought about it, I've actually done it. And it was during my time with the Rock Roll Marathon series. So where we had, bands at every mile, approximately a big act at the end of the event for all of the participants. So that model and design is something that I had been a part of from 2012 to 2017 when I was working for a competitor group in the Rock Roll Marathon series. Those were the types of events that we produced, not only in the running side, but also with the Tri-Rock side as well. So we had a similar component there. Again, it was modified where there was music along the route at all the mile marks and all the splits. Because triathletes are a little bit of a different monster than runners. But also shared in the sense of we're going to entertain you for every mile, every step throughout this experience, and then we're going to celebrate you in the end.
That's interesting, right? So I remember Tri Rock Philly was my first triathlon back in, I think, 2014.
Mhm. I was
And, huh?
I was there.
Well, I remember. So, okay, that's really how I even got into announcing. It's because I can't remember her name, but she wore a skirt with
Uh, um, swim caps.
swim caps
Yes,
and got the
and
crowd.
wrestling.
And
And
Westling, that's right, and Westling, and she got the crowd so hype, and I was like, I want to do that, like, because she calmed my nerves, but yet she made sure that we were entertained, excited, and it was just one of those memorable experiences. And thinking about back in the day doing rock and roll when it was competitor group, I remember the live bands and that live feel. And so I guess because it's been a little bit of distance and the pandemic sort of erases whatever happened pre-pandemic is a whole different memory bank. So I forgot all about it. Like, man, and I'm thinking maybe we have to bring those things back because now at different races, they don't have as much live music, but I'm thinking that that could be a cool thing. Well, I'm glad it's already been done because
Yeah, yeah. And I think the thing too, the industry evolves over time.
right.
So whether it's running or triathlon or any other type of events, it was a very small group of people that participated in these events in the beginning. Incredibly competitive, really driven, really focused groups that participated in these events. And then what we started to see was growth in the sport because lay folks started coming in. So, which is like not your fastest of the fast, but people that wanted that challenge and that experience firsthand. And then you started to see the numbers grow there, which then grew the community that was involved. COVID came, COVID went, and now we're seeing a resurgence in the running space in particular, but I don't think it's exclusively there because there are other types of events that are seeing really great numbers because, again, I'm looking for this activity to do. I'm looking to do it with friends and family and loved ones and people in my community or peers that I may not know that I will see and meet while I'm out there. And I'm now going into this. So it is now, it went from, race production to event production because of partners and components that were tied to that, to now really developing into more of an experience. So what's the experience that you can walk away from this, with regards to partners or individuals that you're meeting, loved ones that you're there, because you walk away from it saying, wow, that was, you went from like, that was a really tough race, or that was a really challenging event, to now that was an amazing experience.
That's on par because people do things for the vibe, which is the experience. What can they talk about? And if it's too challenging, they tend to not come back to it and it becomes just a one off. But if they've had a great experience, then they are the evangelists of that sport, and then they get more people on and continue to do it. So I think you're right in terms of like this whole resurgence of the experience versus just it being a race.
Correct.
Going back to the safety measure of it all, right? Because I don't think people realize the safety part is probably one of the number one challenges that race directors have to really be mindful of. What do you think goes into making a race successful so that it can be an enjoyable and memorable experience?
Safety is number one. At New York Roadrunners and all of the events that we produce, safety is paramount. It's the most important component that's there. And what, we've learned over time is informing all those that are involved help in the path of creating a safe environment for folks. Obviously, making sure that you're logistically sound, operationally sound, you have the necessary personnel that's there. You've walked through all of the necessary, risk mitigations that are there. Like, do we have enough aid stations? Do we have enough post-race services? Do we have medical on the route? Those things that are tied into that are key. But also, have we informed and worked closely with our city agencies and partners? Is everybody aware of what's going on? Do the participants know what the race experience is going to be and what aid and care is available for them? All of that lines up with what will ensure a safe and logistically sound event. And that's always going to be the first thing that's on your mind, is ensuring that you have that. Because when you have a safe event, then you're ready to go. I mean, the thing that we really talk about on the event side of the house here is knowns versus unknowns. You plan for the knowns, you prepare for the unknowns. So are you planned and set and ready to go for all of the known components there? And if you do, then the unknowns will be manageable because you have a solid base and foundation on all of the logistics, all of the operations, and all the safety components that are known. So always something that's first and foremost on your mind. But I think that, like, we're talking about this from a race production component, or even from a participant side. You want to make sure that you are prepared for what will be a safe and enjoyable race experience. So are you properly hydrated? Are you properly trained? Have you gone through, and I always talk about the importance of, if you have the means, did you go and get your checkup, your annual checkup, to make sure that everything is running well, your ticker's fine, everything's fine physically, mentally, and emotionally to go into this experience, because that's going to ensure that you have a safe day. Did you look at the course map? Do you have the necessary nutrition that you need to make it through the day? Have you looked at what the weather report is going to be? Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be dry? Is it going to be wet? And what do you need to be prepared for that day there? Because while the event producer will do everything it can to ensure that you have a great day, there's a level of onus on the part of the participant to be as prepared as possible for that experience, so they not only have, an enjoyable experience, but they have a safe experience as well.
I'm just saying, for the people in the back of the room, did you hear it? Because we say this whenever I have a race director on, we're always talking about the ownership that the athlete has to take on, so that the blame isn't always on the race director. Now, true, sometimes the race directors are shady, and that's okay. You got shady in all departments, but at least you do your part. So prepare, make sure you're trained, drink, hydrate, nutrition, like read the race guide.
Yeah.
It's for your safety. And I say this because it's inevitable. Of course, I interview a lot of beginners, and they're always like, well, I didn't know, but why? And so that's why no matter what, we'll always have a race director on to like share these things, because you can't say it enough.
Correct. Correct.
Especially for the people on the back of the bus like me who sometimes don't listen.
I again, I'm a fan of context and giving people context and understanding to things and putting it in terms that are digestible and understandable for anyone. So I'm a big traveler. I love to travel. I love going places and seeing things. And the more prepared you are for your journey, the better the experience is going to be. So everything from like, do you need a passport or do you not need a passport? Do you need a visa? Do you not need a visa? Those types of things to, have we double checked to make sure that we're all set with our lodging? Did we go through all of the plans and activities that we're going to do for the days that we're there? Do we have the necessary material that we need while we're there? Do I need to bring a water bottle with me? Do I need this? Do I need that? All of those things will help make your experience that much better when you head to the airport or you're driving to your destination and you get there and you have a plan that's laid out for what your experience will be. You can't blame the hotel person if you didn't book your hotel. You can't blame the tour operator if you waited until you got there to book your tour because it's sold out. Like all of those things, there's got to be a level of onus to you. So, taking the race production or event production experience off, but then just putting it normal layperson experience and realizing, okay, the better prepared I am for name that thing, the better the experience is going to be.
We don't even need to labor this point. Be prepared. I just
Yeah.
spent the day in a training. As I was stating prior to coming on, like going into the office really takes me off my game because I really enjoy working from home. Like I enjoy it, but I also love people. So it's like that happy medium. But our training today was about accountability versus responsibility.
Mm.
So you got to be accountable to yourself to get the information and be responsible enough to read it. So who knew that the training would be applicable to our conversation today? So with participating in races and having that experience, I know you've mentioned that you are a participant of races. What type of races have you participated in, and what might you participate in the future?
Um, wow. Okay. So, running, I definitely run my fair share of races. I've run two marathons. I ran the New York City Marathon twice in '08 and in 13. And I am an avid runner of half marathons. I am 44 half marathons in. And I say that if you have a basic base foundation of fitness, you can go out and hammer a half marathon. So if you consistently keep yourself like, running and moving and staying active and whatnot, with obviously having had some level of experience in what the half marathon distance is, you can hammer a half. So I enjoy running half marathons. I've done multi-day cycling events. I've done century rides, things of that nature as well. The most recent thing that I did that was really interesting was I participated in an event called High Rocks, which oddly enough has its DNA back to triathlon and the style and approach that it has. So I did that last year with a team of friends and colleagues as well as folks from the office that all participated in it, and we had the most incredible experience doing that, and definitely looking forward to doing it again. So it's fun to be able to do different types of events like that. I mean, my next race that I'm running is the Lifetime Miami half marathon on February 2nd. So I'm doing that. And then I just registered for the Philadelphia Love Run the 30th of March. So I'll get out and do a handful of races. I enjoy when I can to travel to some races and events. But I'm also like a terrible creature of habit. And there's nothing better than running a race that you're very familiar with in a market or a city or an area that you're familiar with, because that just makes that experience that much better because you're going someplace that you know and love, and you're going to be doing something that you genuinely enjoy. So I usually do about 2 to 3 halves a year, and I try to sprinkle in a couple of our New York Roadrunners races in during the year. I work many of them, and I'm only able to do 5Ks because our fastest participant will get done in like 17 minutes, and we keep our finish line open for about 20 minutes. So it's enough time to start the race, see the athletes off, make my way to the finish line, catch the athletes at the finish line, and then make my way to the start line if it's really close to then run the race. So I did that a couple of times. It's a lot to do when you're considering getting on to the race set at like, 4 or 5 in the morning, 3, 4 or 5 in the morning, and then turning around and running a 5K and then sticking around to help the team break everything down. But I mix it up and sprinkle it about that way as far as being able to participate in these various events.
I love it. I mean, the fact that you're still running and you're traveling to these races, I wonder, are you a good participant of these races? Because as a race director, are you like looking around and saying like, oh, this could be done better, or this, like,
Oh
what
yeah.
type of participant? Oh, okay,
Oh
okay.
yeah, you're definitely so, I tell my colleagues and friends you equate it to like a chef. So I was a big fan of, and still is, even though he's passed away, Anthony Bourdain, and his, travel, eat, engage, learn, communicate, experience life to its fullest. But chefs go to other restaurants to see what chefs do, you know? And I may not necessarily ask to be behind the kitchen, but I want to see what the experience is going to be like and what guests are going to go and experience firsthand. And it's similar to that. When you go to a road race or an event, but I even go so far as to say, like, I'll go to the Food and Wine Festival. I'll go to the US Open in Queens. I'll go to a concert or a show because they all share similar things. How are people flowing in? What's the ingress? What's the egress? What's the experience that's there? What is the partnership activations that's there? What's the guest experience that's there? Many of these events, like the US Open, has a youth component that's there. We have, our Rising New York Roadrunners youth programs and events. That's 30 plus events that we do all over the city. How are they servicing and caring their youth to their youth? And how are we doing that? How are they servicing and caring to the adults and the teachers and the guardians and the parents that are bringing their kids over? And how are we doing the same as well? So yes, absolutely looking at what other people, how other people produce their events and learning and taking some of those takeaways and bringing them back to your shop.
That's good stuff. So High Rocks, you mentioned that High Rocks was has a little bit of that triathlon DNA.
Yes.
How so? I have a lot of friends who are doing High Rocks and they absolutely love it. What is it that mimics or takes away from the tri space that High Rocks has? And how is it? Well, I have a couple of questions, but let's answer that one first.
So it's multidiscipline, which is similar to triathlon, swim, bike, run. So in this case, you are running 1K and doing 8 different workouts, 8 different disciplines. You can do it as an individual, similar to a triathlon. You could do it as a team, similar to a triathlon, where you have somebody could do the swim, somebody's doing the run, somebody's doing the bike. So there's that component that's there to it. So you could do it as a team of one, two, or four as with High Rocks. And what's cool about it too, and I genuinely miss this about triathlon, and I see it in the running space, and I see it at our road races and events at Roadrunners. And I even, like, this past weekend, we had 5,000 people participating in our Joe K 10K in Central Park. It's a snowy day, but folks came out. They were energized because they were around their peers, their friends, their colleagues, and so on and so forth. But they cheered each other on and they supported each other. And we saw that a lot in triathlon, which was so great, where whether if it was a relay team in a tri, somebody's cheering you on as you're getting ready to jump into the water or make your way through transition. And then, you're there. I hand it over to you, Michelle, and now you're going to take off and go to the bike. And, we're there, we're supporting one another. We're hanging out in the transition area and the meetup area for the person that's going to turn around and go out into the run. High Rocks has a lot of those similar components to it that you've seen in triathlon that I dig. And what's cool is there's a lot of runners that are doing High Rocks because of the run component, but also what you've realized and what we all realize in running is there should be some level of dynamic workouts. So you shouldn't just run, run, run all the time. You should do some sort of strength training. You should do some sort of high intensity training. You should work different parts of your body because that helps prevent injury and whatnot. And I think a lot of folks are transitioning over to that space that's there. So yeah, I had the best time doing it, with I mean, my nephew and a couple of buddies of mine were on my team, and then we had a mixed team of all my colleagues from work, and we were all cheering each other on, and it was such a great experience, and reminded me a lot of some of our races and events, like we do this final finisher where we wait for the last athletes to come and finish the race, and people are out there cheering you on and really supporting you. I told the team, I was like, we can't leave until the last team is done. And we got to cheer these folks on. And they were so appreciative. They walked over and said, thanks so much, man. We heard you cheering for us and so on and so forth. So that sense of community is contagious. And that sense of community is universal, no matter what the event.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Plus, it's accessible. So it's easy for people to kind of get in and do and not have that swim element. But you mentioned something about staying around and cheering until the last person. And I'm skipping around a little bit because I've noticed when I've seen the New York marathon finisher or so on social media, it's dark and it's like you all are still out there cheering and no one is leaving until that person, last finisher crosses the finish line. How important is that? Because a lot of times races have time limits that they, abide by and they don't allow finishers to finish. But it seems like you all care about those people coming across the finish line. Why? And how do you make it so that people can do that? Because I feel like in a way you're making the sport a little accessible because everyone's not going to be a finishing 2 hour marathon or finishing 4 hours. And you might have the back of the packers like me who like a party pace. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
how do you make it more accessible? Well, how are you making it accessible and allowing those finishers to finish and still feel valued and giving them the medals, having food for them? Because I hear so many wonderful things about that.
So we're fortunate where our finish line is in Central Park. So we are in a park. We're not on a major thoroughfare. We're not on a major roadway where we needed to immediately clear out the finish line and remove all the elements so we can open it up to traffic. So we're very, very, very fortunate there, which is contributing to why other races may have a hard course cutoff because of that. The second thing too is in a major metropolitan area like New York City, we have sidewalks. Again, not every market has the luxury of being able to have a city that folks can traverse by foot. So we have sidewalks. So what's Ted saying here? So we do have a first last timeline. We do have course cutoffs. We do have, a recommended pace per time for our participants, where it's about approximately 17 and a half minutes that we want an athlete to be able to maintain behind the sweep vehicle. Once the sweep vehicle arrives to an athlete, they have one of two choices. They're going to get onto the sweep vehicle or they're asked to get onto the sidewalk because we have to reopen this major metropolitan area, this city. So, and that's in partnership with the city of New York and all of the agencies that we know that our first athlete's going to be here, our final athlete's going to be here, and we'll be able to clean up and reopen the roads to the community at large. So that's the agreement we have with the city. So it's a little bit of a background on like how we're logistically able to keep athletes going, keep the finish line open for as long as it is. So why we do it is we celebrate our participants, from first to final. Yes, we strive to be one of the most accessible marathons in the world, the TCS New York City Marathon. That's a pillar of ours that we really work towards and identifying, how the running community has evolved and how diverse it is. Yes, I'm not here for a fast time. I'm here for a good time. And I want to experience this race and I want to experience what this marathon experience is all about. And I should not be denied because I'm not a 5.5 minute mile pace runner. We love them. We celebrate them as well. But there are the folks that are in the back of the pack that when they crest the park on the southern end of the park, 59th Street, and they're making their way up and they see those lights and they hear the sound of people cheering them on, that lifts them up, that lifts their spirit. For a number of years, I was working on a marathon and half marathon in Savannah, Georgia, the Rock and Roll Savannah Marathon. And that race fell on the Saturday before the marathon, New York. And I would wrap the marathon up in Savannah, jump on a plane and get home into New York so I could cheer people on. make signs and whatnot. And I'd be up in Harlem holding a sign, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna leave soon. I'm gonna wait for the next person to come by. And this is, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and I'm still there. And I'm like, I'm gonna leave for the next person. And I don't leave because somebody sees you and they're like so thankful that you're there and cheering them on. And that same level of energy is like, tripled when they cross that finish line and see that there's participants that are there that finished the race earlier in the day and came back. We've had pro athletes that complete their marathon, get their, awards, head back, shower, eat, take a nap, and then come back later on that evening to cheer on and support the runners that are there. And that's one of the best things too, because it shows that cycle of support and engagement that we have at Roadrunners. So it's really, really special to have that community that's there and also celebrate these final finishers at all our weekly races and all of our events as well.
So for those of you who have gotten that quote unquote DNF because you didn't finish within the time frame, it's okay. You are still a finisher. However, if you need a little extra time, and there's no shame in that, go to the New York Marathon. They got you. They got you. So here's the little pub. Go there. They got you, and finish and be a part of one of the world, majors. Like, I think it's okay to do smaller races. And I'm a huge advocate for races that are smaller, but I'm also a huge advocate for going and experiencing a big race, because there's nothing like experiencing a well-supported race. And I think there's room for both. Like, I'm training for a spring marathon that's smaller, but because of the cause, I'm here for the cause. And I've done bigger marathons, which was Marine Corps marathon 10 years ago, which is why I'm doing another full standalone marathon. And so you got to have the both experience. You can't just do only big and not experience the small, because it's not about where you start. It's about how you finish. And it's also just, don't despise small beginnings. Like, small is good. It's
Absolutely.
foundational. Like,
100%.
just don't do that. So going back to your participation, you've done multi-day cycling events. You've done high rocks, which is newer to the scene. You've done running events. You're an avid half marathoner, but have you done a triathlon?
Yeah. So this is when your viewers kind of frown upon me. I have not done a triathlon. I have worked in the triathlon space. Um, my first triathlon that I staffed was '01, the New York City Triathlon in 2001, August of 2001. That was my first time. I was actually working at Roadrunners, and it was part of the bid for the Olympics to come to New York. I think it's like NYC 2012 bid. And we were looking to try to produce a number of different types of unique events that were Olympic distance events and Olympic scale events. And the triathlon was one of the ones that were there. And I didn't know anything about the tri space in '01. Zero. I didn't know what a triathlon was, but I knew that it was an event. It was an endurance event. People came together, a community was engaged. It was an experience. It checked off all the things that I wanted to see, do, and experience. And as a young person at the time, and I went out there and worked an aid station over at one of the translations and helped kind of manage getting things set up and so on and so forth. And I was hooked. I'd worked triathlons in almost every major market in the US, New York, DC, Philly, South Florida, Escape from Alcatraz, Chicago, I've even worked triathlons overseas and the Beijing International Tri. So definitely saw that, which was like, okay, I think I need to try this. Pardon the pun. I think I need to experience this thing firsthand. And one of the coolest things that I really, really love about triathlon that is still really strong right now is the relay component. So if there's a discipline that you're not necessarily strong at, do it as a relay. Get a team together and get out there and say, okay, great. You're going to do the swim. You're going to do the bike. I'll do the run, or I'll do the bike. You'll do the swim, or something to that effect. Or if there's a discipline that you're not particularly strong at, I'm going to double down on the running. I'm going to double down on the swimming. I'm going to double down on the biking and really build on that. And with the goal of being able to do a sprint distance try. And that's the other really cool thing about the triathlon distance too, is the various distances that are there. And not only that, but the venues by which you can produce a triathlon. I mean, even New York Roadrunners produced the triathlon for a number of years out in Queens, which was a pool swim. So started in the pool, swam, came out. It was in Queens at and one of the parks there, and you bike and then you turn around, park your bike at transition, went out and did a run. And it was really fascinating that we did this very, very small triathlon for our community so they can get exposed to the different types of events. So unfortunately, with transitioning career paths, going from working in the multi-sport space and triathlon to really doubling down in the running space, I never had a chance to delve into the triathlon space. I'll never say never. I think it would be definitely something great to do. Again, when you think about the fact that I could do it as a relay or I could do a duathlon or something to that effect. So I could try to mix it up. I could do a sprint distance. I think it's still something that would be really cool to see, do, and experience firsthand.
Absolutely. And like you said, never say never, but also the timing of it. You've produced up Ironman events. And so you've been around the space, so you know it. And I think to me, this is why it was important to have you on the show, is because even though you have not participated in your first triathlon yet, you have been triathlon adjacent and immersed in the sport. And so it doesn't matter where you feed into it, it always leads to something different. And so I have a challenge for you because that's what I do. And there is a race in July that you can be a part of a relay if you desire. So I will keep you posted on that.
All
It's
right.
in New Jersey. It's in the Princeton area. That's not too far from New York,
No,
right? All right.
not far at all. No.
So challenge. You guys will hear more about the challenge a little bit later, but I'm just putting it out there because we're still working out some details. With that said, this has been really, really awesome. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I also would like for you to share to this audience, what does it take to just get started? And how can you have longevity as an endurance sport? Because you've been in the sport on the side of producing great events and race directing for a very long time. But what would you tell people to get started and how to stay in the game for the long haul?
So what I would say, first and foremost, when you enjoy what you're doing, whether it's professional, whether it's running or any other type of activity or event, it doesn't come across as a chore. It doesn't seem like a labor by any means. So definitely get into an activity or an event that you genuinely enjoy. I also will say community is everything. At New York Roadrunners, being able to have various run clubs and crews and different neighborhoods and communities that all come out and participate and engage in this and help build as a community together is really something that's beautiful and genuine, in that space. But I think for a beginner that's coming into the space, I'll specifically talk about running in particular. And it's was January 13th upon the recording of this podcast here. Some folks still are, either have their New Year's resolutions or goals that are in place. Listen, your goal can start this moment. You don't have to wait for Jan 1 to say, hey, listen, I want to get out there and do this. And what I often tell folks, which is practice, at least what I did when I started running again. I wasn't a collegiate runner. I ran in high school for a number of years, stayed always active, playing various sports, intramurals, things of that nature. But my first half marathon was in '07, and it was the Philadelphia Marathon half marathon. And my build up to that was, let's run based on time, then on distance. So what does Ted mean? I'm going to run for 3 minutes straight and then take a break. I'm going to run for 5 minutes straight. I'm going to run for 10 minutes straight and build and build and build before I even start thinking about miles. And I was able to run today for 20 minutes straight. I was able to run today for 30 minutes straight. And it might not sound like, a big deal to some of your listeners. Like, what is he talking about running for 30 minutes straight? I do that all the time. But for somebody that comes from a base of 0, 30 minutes is amazing. And from some of us that are very fast, 30 minutes is 3 miles. So you just did that distance. So building a base, based on time versus distance is definitely the way I would go from there. And where you can surround yourself in some sort of a community of peers that are all helping you along the journey. And that means that they are either partaking in this for the first time with you and they have guidance and support. So we have, our coaches at New York Roadrunners. We have run clubs and crews that you could be a part of. There are community run groups that are around as well. Engage with those folks because you're going to see the barometer, like the sphere of difference that's there. First timers, middle pack runners, super fast runners that are all there, all moving to the same space and pace that's there. So I think, set yourself up and say, I'm going to do a little bit at a time every single day, if you can, or every other day, start with a walk and that walk turns into a jog and that jog turns into a run and you build on that consistency. And when you connect with people that are your peers and your friends and people in your neighborhood and your community, they're going to keep you accountable and they're going to keep asking you to show up. And then you go, hey, I want to register for that first 5K. I want to register for that first 10K. And you build and you build and you build. And then you'll see a huge difference that's there. And it's beautiful to see folks that are on various points of their run experience. We have youth that are running as part of our rising. We have our age group athletes that are in the middle. We have our striders, our senior striders that are older folks that are still out there hammering. I mean, it's beautiful to see that gamut there.
Okay. Going back, and this will be our last question before rapid fire. But in 2021, when you were selected to be the first African-American race director and has since continued to grow, and thinking about your journey overall, what has it been like to be a minority in a space where you've had to kind of carve out, and maybe you didn't have to carve out, maybe you've had people that just, what has it been like for you to, one, be sometimes the only one in the room, but two, increase that diversity for others now that you have, what's the word I want to use? Influence and power to create space for others. What has that been like for you?
It's a journey. And I think the thing that's really important to understand is it's not a journey that's been taken alone or by yourself. There have been other firsts. There will continue to be firsts until there's a point where there's no more firsts, which will be great. I think it's understanding that there are those that have passed the baton to you to continue on. So our first president of New York Roadrunners was Ted Corbett. Ted Corbett was the first African-American to run the Marathon Olympics for the United States. Like that's a huge thing to be able to have ties and connections as an organization to somebody like that. He has navigated so much and has kind of set the scene for those like myself and others to move along that way. Mary Wittenberg was the first woman to be a race director of a major marathon in the world, following behind her footsteps as well. So I think it'll set more of a path for others to come ahead. I think that I don't think and would hope I was not selected as he's a Black guy, let's put him in. I think it was more along the lines of this is a skilled professional that brings a lot to the table. So, this person brings this to the table, and it just so happens that he's African American, and once your foot is in the door, then you start to dispel myths. You start to break things down. You start to represent and show up, and you create a space for others that want to be there because there weren't anyone there before. And when they see you, that level of comfort is increased. There's nothing better than walking to a strange room and see a familiar face. And sometimes the familiar face is just a face that looks like yours. And so showing up is always key. I often say the greatest gift is to be present and to show up and be there and connect and be of service to people in the space. Um, the journey continues, marathon continues, to pardon the pun, and we're going to continue to move forward and keep opening doors. But fortunately, there are a lot of people who worked really hard to get, us to this point, to get me to this point, and I'm going to continue working hard to open up doors and opportunities for others in that same space.
So, Ted, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we sign out? Like, what events you got coming up? I mean, we're about to enter into Black History Month. What you got going?
All right. Well, first and foremost, Mashonda, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. It was a great conversation. Great to chop it up about triathlon. It's been a while since I've had a chat about, multi-sport and that space. And hopefully we've inspired a couple of folks to get out there and give it a try. Pardon the pun. But to close out, New York Road Runners is a nonprofit organization which really focuses on the transformative power of running. And for more information about programming and events that we do, definitely go to nyrr.org to see the variety of programs that we have that are both in person and virtual. And speaking of virtual, going into Black History Month, we have our annual virtual Black History Month 5K. We do it in partnership with the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce here in New York, where they share a lot of information on programs and events that they will be producing in the New York Harlem area. We also have lots of information on Black history as it relates to running and the running events. But the virtual Black History Month 5K will be going on from February 15th to February 23rd. It is free to participate in. You can walk, you can run, you can jog, you can stroll to get the 5K there. This is a global event. So if you go onto our website and type in virtual 5K, it'll launch at the end of this month, the end of January. So by the time this is posted and live, you'll be able to register and participate and get out there and do your part for Black History Month.
You heard them. Do your part, sign up. It's free 99. You cannot get better than that. Well, there you have it. This is Ted Metellus, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Now we get to the fun part. It's called rapid fire. Now I got to think on the spot because my questions are definitely geared towards the tri space, but I'm quick on my feet. We'll be able to make it happen. So with that said, favorite music artist?
The Notorious B.I.G.
Okay, favorite song?
Favorite song of his
Or
is
just in general?
favorite song
Favorite
in
song? In
general.
general, yeah.
I'm gonna mix it up and say my favorite song is Bill Withers' Use Me Up.
That's a good one. Favorite place to run a half that's not in the Northeast?
That's not in the Northeast. Favorite place to run a half. I ran a half in Minnesota, the grandma's half marathon. Loved it. It was an incredible experience. I ran the Madison Mini in Madison, Wisconsin. Loved
Your
it.
favorite one?
My favorite one
Yeah,
run
which one favorite
is
outside of the
one favorite.
Northeast?
Bank of America Chicago 13.1 on the west side of Chicago. The
Okay.
only running event in the west side of Chicago, which is a predominantly African American community. I've run it the last 3 years. It is one of the most beautiful experiences that a person can have, particularly a person of color, to run in that neighborhood and community and to see the beauty of that neighborhood and to see eyes open up that lifelong Chicagoans that have never been to the West Side that came to the West Side because of this event. So if I had to pick one, it'd be the B of A 13.1.
All right, I'm gonna have to put that one on my list.
Please do. Highly recommend it. Run it. It's incredible.
All right, favorite, you may have to dig for this one. Favorite triathlon that you've produced?
Favorite triathlon that I produced, that's a very tough answer because it's crossed between New York and Philly. New York because it's my home. I was here for the very first one, worked many, many years of the New York City Triathlon, and Philadelphia because I was a assistant race director for 2 years on that event and also the She Rocks Women's Triathlon Series in Philadelphia. So I'm kind of cross between Philly and New York. So
It just, I know this is rapid fire and I'm going against my own rules, but that Philly triathlon was really dope. And I do believe that there needs to be another triathlon in that area where you can swim in the Schuylkill. It's disgusting as it is. I am not a fan, but it was something I felt like I became a Philadelphian just for the day after swimming in the Schuylkill River. Like you can't tell me anything. I have swam and drank the water, gotten
Well,
a little bit sick.
the fact that you can say Schuylkill gives you props there because not everybody can say Schuylkill. They'll see it spelled out and they're like, what is that? And it's Schuylkill. So there was a women's triathlon that ran for a while, and it may still be going on now that a colleague of mine, Stephen Del Monte, produced. But what was really amazing about the She Rocks Women's Triathlon series, to kind of segue super fast, was um, and I love these types of events is that it was small and it was targeted to help beginners with their first time. And anytime, and like, if we have any event producers that are watching this and listening to this, that is an audience you want to serve, and you want to continue to serve them. In New York, we have the MasterCard Mini 10K, very first 10K race, women's race in the country, and has been going for 50 years strong. We have our women's half marathon, which is amazing because for many women, it's their very, very, very first half marathon. And again, when you're running with peers that are on this journey for the first time, it creates that level of bond and support. And what I thought was great about the She Rocks Women's Tries, that same level of comfort was there because you didn't feel intimidated or overwhelmed because you had peers that were doing that same journey with you.
Yeah. I've actually done the Philadelphia women's triathlon that Steve Delmo
Oh, right
does.
on.
Yeah. So, but it's different. It's a pool. It's not the Schuylkill. It's
It's
different,
not the Schuylkill. True
but
story.
it does
True
have the
story.
essence. It does have the essence, and he puts on an incredible race. Race shirt. Keep it for memories or wear it proudly.
Yes. Wear it proudly. You can't keep it for memories, but then you're going to get stocked up. So wear your shirts. Please wear your shirts because as an event producer, there's nothing that brings a bigger smile to my face than seeing somebody wearing a shirt of a race that I've produced or been a part of. And it makes for a great conversation starter, for somebody who goes, oh my goodness, I ran that race, or, oh, you did that. Like you ran the New York City Marathon. There was a gentleman that was flying back from Berlin. And I'm at the airport and we're in the security line, and he had an old school New York Road Runners sweatshirt, like the old Apple with the little, and I was like, can I take a picture of that? Like I thought it was so cool to see that. So wear your shirts.
Most memorable finish line experience of you crossing the finish line.
Oh, wow. Um, I've had a couple. Okay, I will tell you the most memorable one, and actually I'm looking at the picture there, was my first New York City Marathon that I ran in '08. And having worked for the marathon and worked for the organization, my colleagues and friends were all there waiting for me, and my mom was waiting for me. And she sat there at the finish line as her son, her youngest boy, slowly ran a 5+ hour marathon. And there's this incredible photo of my mother and I embracing at the finish line that I hold true to me. And it was one of the greatest experiences ever. So that one is great. All my marathon finishes, all my half marathon finishes are amazing and special. I'm grateful and blessed to be able to still get out there and run. But
Mhm.
that one is number one on my list.
That's incredible. We usually ask this as the last question for those who've done a triathlon, and it is not the. I'll just ask it. So we usually ask people, do you pee on the bike or get off and take a proper pee break? However, I guess I can't sort of ask you that because you've done long distance cycling races.
Yes.
So do you pee on the bike or get off and take a proper pee break?
I got off and took a proper pee. Like
Oh,
we're not peeing on the bike. I'm sorry.
well, there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you for those of you who are listening. Remember to like, share um, with your friends. This is on any major podcast platform and on YouTube. We had this saying on Try Beginner's Luck. Whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win. All right. Ted mentioned earlier, I record early. So this is the end of the month, but we are getting ready to kick off Black History Month. So be expecting for an amazing guest list as we go into Black History Month. With that said, I'm Mashonda Miles, also known as Mashonda Shines, and we are out. Peace. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. We need your help so we can continue to try at TBL. So for more information on where you can find and subscribe to this podcast, visit www.trybeginnersluck.com. And don't forget, whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win.